Greetings. This is Dr. English's Book Lovers Book Club, and I'm Dr. English, and I teach English. This week, I'm going to review the book All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiely. Or Brendan Kiely. I always say Brandon, but it's Brendan. B-R-E-N-D-A-N. Brendan Kiely. As I said last week, one of the things I think that there were several books that came out in about 2017 in response to the Michael Brown murder in Ferguson, Missouri. And this one I think it's extraordinary that you have two authors, Jason Reynolds, who's black, and Brendan Kiely, who's white, and they take on the persona of Rashad and Quinn. And it's really a nice mixture of the two voices. And I think it's important to give a little background about this because Rashad is falsely, accused of stealing something and is beaten terribly. I won't go any further than that to just say that some of the scenes, most of the scenes with him where he's the narrator are in a hospital. But it's like the 6 degrees of separation. You have Rashad, whose friend, who really doesn't know Quinn, but Quinn's perspective is, they all go, is that the person the police officer who assaults Rashad is his older brother, Paul, who became a police officer. And so the interesting thing about Rashad is that this black adolescent, his father is also a police officer. So they're all kind of tied together. And I think the whole idea for Reynolds and Kiely is to emphasize that we're all in a community together, and that, everyone is trying to do their best. Because of the racial tensions in our country, that lives get upset by the perceptions of stereotypes and prejudice. And so that's, to me, one of the main, from my perspective, that to understand that people are all in a community together. And I think if we could just remember that we'd have less problems and less acts of violence. At least I'd like to hope that. But as I was saying, to get a little bit of plot for you, I thought that was really interesting because Rashad and Quinn are both on the same basketball team, and Quinn is witness to the brutal beating, and it's almost like, and I should back up and say, it's Quinn is not his brother, but it's one of their other teammates, and Getso, I don't know how to pronounce it. I've got that kind of mixed up in my mind, but it's one of their other teammates, but Quinn is like a family member because his father died in the line of duty. So there's all these police officers, and friendships, and they're like family. So Guzzo is the name of the other player in the team, and it's his older brother Paul who Quinn sees, who is like a surrogate dad or big brother to him, because his own father was killed in the line of duty. And so the rest of this, or the gist of the book, is after that initial beating, so I think Rashad, his dad is like a former police officer, and the relationship between him and his father is somewhat tenuous because he's in ROTC. I mean, he's the clean cut kid, and he's in the wrong place, the wrong time, and people misinterpret what's going on, and it shouldn't be that way. And I think that's the gist of it from Rashad's point of view and from Jason Reynolds' point of view, that you're just going about your business and things they aren't what they appeared to be, but that can get you in a lot of trouble if you're a black male in America. And so I think that's the message that is really well said, and there's a whole dialogue around that throughout the whole book. And then there's Quinn, who's dealing with, this is like a family member, and he's just like, I can't even believe what I've just seen. And so there's this tension throughout the whole book, especially between Quinn and Gutso, because they're like friends. They've been friends. They've been like brothers. And Paul, the older brother, has been like a dad to Quinn. And so Quinn has to figure all of this out because he sees what happens and he knows the truth. And you just feel for him. But also you're feeling such utter horror for Rashad that he is so physically injured he has to go to the hospital. I think that both Reynolds and Kiely did a really fantastic job of really addressing a very, very, it's a really tricky, situation and emotions, but they don't hold any punches. I think, the thing that, there's a coming of understanding, a coming of age for both Rashad and Quinn. But I think probably more so for Quinn, because there's some hard realities and truths that he has to face that's it's just like so authentic about some of the things that are said by the white people in this book that are really astounding, but also I think it's very accurate. And so and this was 2017, it's 2025 now, so it's almost been 8 years, and it's, in some ways it's really sad to think that things have in some ways have not improved, and maybe they've gotten worse. But I think maybe people just need to go back and read this book, and I'll read Dear Martin. I have 3 different excerpts I want to read because there's some really good things that I wanted to read that I think are just so good. Here's the first one. This is from Quinn's perspective. Thug was the word Paul used when I told him about Mark. It was 2 weeks after Mark had pushed me into the fence. I finally told Paul, and Paul found him later that same night. Beat the hell out of him. Paul was banged up too, but he said he'd won. Fucking Thug won't bug you anymore for real. I never found out if Mark had needed to go to the hospital that night. But if Paul's bruises and split lip were the signs of the winner, I had to imagine that Mark was a whole lot worse. And now, 6 years later, I feel sick as if it had happened yesterday. I was the one who could have put another kid in the hospital all those years ago, just by asking someone to take care of him. It was no different than ordering a hit. Didn't that make me a thug? Christ's sake, I'd wanted to see someone else's blood, to see him bleed. And this is the Paul, who's Gutso's older brother, who took care of Quinn when he was having an issue with a student named Mark. The next excerpt is from Rashad, and he'd been in the hospital, it's it's actually from Quinn, but it's in the classroom after this incident happens, and the teacher is really upset, and she just cried, and she doesn't really say anything, and it's like the students are all freaked out because it's like, wow, she's never like this. And they had read Battle Royale by Ralph Ellison, and she had been told that she couldn't have the essay about the Invisible Man as an assignment. And so the students take it upon themselves. You with me, he mouthed back. I nodded. Then, for the first time ever in any class I'd ever been in with him, Toombs spoke up without being called on. Battle Royale, he said, pulling his photocopy out of his folder for Rashad. And he began to read. It goes a long way back, some 20 years. All my life, I had been looking for something, and everywhere I turned, someone tried to tell me what it was. Now, Toombs is not a read aloud kind of guy, but he went right into it, reading clear and confident for the whole room to hear, and it made the most perfect sense reading the words Ralph Ellison had written years ago. Mrs. Tracy lifted her head, her face a mess, and something about her crying there in class made me so mad, like Rashad's reality meant now she couldn't talk about the story or didn't know how, but there was Ralph Ellison, and Toombs too, just telling us what we needed to do. I unfolded my crinkled pages and followed along as Toombs read aloud, ending with the final line of the first paragraph. It took me a long time and much painful boomeranging of my expectations to achieve a realization everyone else appears to have been born with, that I am nobody but myself. But first, I had to discover that I am an invisible man. And then the last one is of Rashad, and it's he made friends with the woman in the gift shop, Mrs. Fitzgerald, I think is the name, and he's trying to decide if he's going to go to a protest. Other students have put together a protest. And she sees Rashad for what he is. And she says, "You scared." It's not that. It is that. The old lady cut me off. "Let me tell you something. I'm 74. You know what that means? That means I was around during the Civil Rights Movement. It means I remember all of that. The segregation, the lynchings, not being able to do what you want to do or go where you want to go or vote. I remember everybody looking at my brother, God bless his soul, like a criminal, an animal, like he was scum or less than, just because of the way he looked. Skin like coal, hair like cotton." She paused and tongued the roof of her mouth, so I offered her water in a styrofoam cup. "I remember the bus boycott and the Freedom Riders and all that. I remember the March on Washington, and I especially remember the ones down in Selma." "You were there for all that?" I asked in amazement. She took another sip of water, swallowed, and said, "No, I wasn't there for any of them." She got a fierce look on her face. "Because I was scared. My brother took the bus trip down to Selma. He begged me to go, begged me. But I told him it didn't matter. I told him that he was going to get himself killed, and that wasn't bravery, it was stupidity. So he went without me. I watched the clips on the news. I saw him being beaten with everyone else and realized that my brother, in fact, was the most courageous man I knew, because Selma had nothing to do with him. Well, one could argue that it did, a little bit. But he was doing it for us, all of us." Finally, I always have students who want to know whether they should teach this in high school. I would say you could teach it in high school. There is a bit of language, and of course, it's not really explicit, but there is the brutal scene of the beating. And you know that Rashad is injured very seriously. But I think that the message of the book is so important that I think, this is something that you should teach in your classroom. And it's a safe environment, and you should have conversations about the way things have been in our country. It isn't just recent. It's been around for a long time. And that we can make the argument that it's the books like All American Boys that help us to move past that. Of course, it would be a good book for a supplemental book and one to have in your library. I just reread it this week, and I had to be reminded of it. Like, I had kind of forgotten some of the things and the back and forth between Quinn and Rashad. But I just think it's extraordinary that these two authors worked together to write the story at a time when we really needed to have the conversation in our classroom and in our homes, in our churches, all public places, about about the situation of our police force. And I'm hoping since 2017 that it has improved. Next week, I will do another book. This one has been banned. I think this one was banned in some schools, but it's not as popular as it was. But this one has continued to be banned, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And this book I have taught in my intermediate methods course. And I got a lot of really interesting responses about The Hate You Give. So tune in next week when I talk about I review The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Thanks for joining me. I know I've gone a little long today, but there's so many good excerpts from All American Boys I wanted to share with you. So see you next week. Bye.